Hello. Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing tonight? Can you all hear me okay? Excellent. I really love that enthusiasm. Well, my name is Margie Cook. I'm part of the team that brings you live from NYPL. And I want to say hello again to everybody who's watching right now, those of you in this room and those of you watching online. I am so thrilled today to introduce Lisa Kyung Gross, founder of League of Kitchens, a culinary dream team of immigrant women who invite you into their homes to share family recipes and stories. She's here today alongside author and scholar Yael Raviv and author and baker Abby Balangate. Tonight's panel, moderated by Yael, will explore themes of tradition, innovation, and cultural preservation in cooking, including the creation of League of Kitchens, the importance of access to traditional recipes, and how each panelist navigates and interprets their culinary heritage. You can find their full bios in your printed program or on the event listing on the website, and I highly encourage you to check them out because they are very exceptional cooks and food scholars. So to tell you more about the League of Kitchen, it's a one-of-a-kind cooking school that offers an immersive experience, allowing participants to learn family recipes and culinary traditions from around the world, often in the homes of the instructors. And these exceptional cooks provide more than just ingredients and techniques. They share their whole cultural heritage and deeper significance behind each dish. So now with the League of Kitchens cookbook, their recipes from Mexico, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Burkina Faso, Ukraine, Greece, Afghanistan, India, and more can be made in your home kitchen. So the cookbook is available for purchase both here in the room and through our online shop for those attending virtually. And however you choose to buy it, all proceeds will support the New York Public Library. We also have a wonderful display of cookbooks from the library's collection right outside the auditorium. A big thank you tonight to Rebecca Fetterman for curating this fantastic selection. And if you haven't had a chance to check it out, there will be also time after tonight's program. And also for those of you here tonight, there will be a signing after the event. For all you online folks, if you need a link to purchase the book, we'll put it in the chat now if we haven't already. And of course, if you have a New York Public Library card, which I assume all of you do, you can borrow the book for free. So before I turn it over, I'd love to share some exciting upcoming events. Tomorrow night, we have live stream tickets still available for Shahnameh, interpreting an Iranian cultural touchstone. Delve into Persia's founding through conversation, performance, and the library's own collections. On March 18th, join us for a hilarious Her Story, literary and historical improv brought to you by the library and NY Laughs. This one-night-only improv showdown blends comedy, literature, and history, featuring performers, celebrity judges, including actor Gina Gershon, fashion designer Cynthia Rowley, and more special guests. And on March 26, coinciding with the opening of the Joan Didion John Donne Archive, New York Times film critic Alyssa Wilkinson will be here to examine Joan Didion's lasting influence through the lens of American myth-making. And one last thing, when you entered the auditorium, you should have received an index card. Please use these cards to write down your questions. A staff member will come around a little bit later to collect the cards. And also for the Q&A portion, we'll be joined by special guests, instructors, Ukrainian-Russian instructor Larissa Frumkin, and Greek instructor Despina Ekonomou. Keep that in mind as you think of great questions for the panel. And lastly, Live from NYPL is made possible by the continuing generosity of Celeste Bartos, Manaz Isfahani Bartos, and Adam Bartos, and of course by all of you, our fantastic supporters and friends near and far. Thank you for that support, and thank you all again for being here. And with that, let's please give a warm applause to Lisa Kyung, Abby Balangate, and Yael Raviv.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, the library, for having us. It's such a pleasure to be sitting here with two amazing women that have published two very, very beautiful cookbooks, and we get to talk about them. So that's going to be very fun for me, at least. I hope also for you. Before we start, when I looked at both of your books over the weekend, the thing that really struck me, I know we talked about heritage and crossing borders and all of those amazing themes that we'll get to. But I was really struck by the combination of storytelling and recipes that both of you weave together. Lisa, in your book, both your own story and the stories and journeys of the various instructors that take part in the League of Kitchens book. And Abby, your own kind of biography and your family's journey that's interspersed with the recipes in your book. And that really resonated with me because I work with Jewish Food Society, and the work that we do is all about family collecting and preserving family recipes from all around the world and the stories behind them. And those stories are most often stories of journeys and migrations. So I really found that connection inspiring and exciting. So I'm looking forward to talking about it. And with that, maybe we'll start with you, Lisa. If you could just talk to us a little bit about the League of Kitchens and your journey to its inception and how the book came to be.
Thank you, and thank you for everyone for being here tonight, and Abby and Yael, and thank you to the library. So, the League of Kitchens is a culturally immersive cooking school in New York City and online, where all of our instructors are immigrant women who are exceptional home cooks. So they're the people in their communities that everybody knows is the best cook, that they, at the church potluck, it's like, where are Jeanette's grape leaves, those will be the best. And all of our classes either take place in our instructors' home kitchens or online. We will also do private events for companies in an event space. And we've been in business now for 11 years, which is pretty amazing. And the idea for the League of Kitchens came out of my own personal experience in that my mother's Korean. She immigrated to the US in the early 1970s. My dad's American of Hungarian Jewish ancestry, and his family came to New York in the 1890s. So two very different immigrant stories. And when I was growing up, my Korean grandmother lived with my family, and she cooked lots of wonderful Korean food all the time. But whenever I'd want to cook with her, she would always say, "Oh, don't worry about cooking. You should go study because studying is more important." And, I see a lot of nods. I often see nods when I tell the story. And I think for her, she didn't really value her own cooking skills. They were expected, taken for granted, and she really wanted me to have educational and professional opportunities that she did not have and would have loved to have had. And in her mind, cooking was equated with being stuck at home and not being able to follow your dreams. So she didn't teach me how to cook. She didn't teach my mother how to cook either, because my mother's actually the youngest of 6. So by the time when she was coming up, she had taught my mom's older sisters, and she just said, do something else. So actually my mother is a painter, and she's a very talented artist and not such a good cook. But she actually is not very interested in cooking at all. And so later on, after college, when I was living actually with my husband, Dan, who was then my boyfriend, we both sort of started to teach ourselves how to cook because we didn't want to only eat out. And I wanted to cook recipes from my childhood. My grandmother had passed away by that time. I tried to teach myself from cookbooks and from the internet, and just nothing tasted as good as when my grandmother made it. And I realized that so often the way that recipes are written, these little details and nuances and ways of doing things are often left out, though not from our cookbook, which we'll talk about. And often those are sensory cues that are much easier to learn from a person. And so I had this fantasy of, I wish there was another Korean grandmother that I could cook with and learn her family recipes and cook with her in her home kitchen. And I kind of stored that idea away. I actually went on to do an MFA in art, focused on socially engaged art and social practice. And when I came back to New York, this idea came back to me. And I thought, well, what if I could find incredible home cooks from all around the world living in New York City who could welcome people into their homes, teach their family recipes, and it could be just as much about creating meaningful opportunities for cross-cultural connection and learning and exchange as it was about this incredible cooking, eating, drinking experience. So I actually thought I was going to do it as like a 3-month art project in partnership with an arts organization. And then I did a small pilot and realized that, number one, it was a lot of work to find the right people, to do this training, to do all the steps, to write the recipes. And The instructors love doing it. The two women I worked with who still teach with me, it's our Bangladeshi and Lebanese instructors. And then my friends and family who did those sort of pilot classes also loved them. And so I thought, well, what if I could make this a small business and an unusual recreational cooking school? So that was in 2013, and here we are, 2025.
Amazing. Congrats.
Thank
It's
you.
wonderful. As a person that experienced some of your classes, they're really amazing. I was wondering, though, about that transition. You know, it started as this art project, and it ended up being a business. Do you see some of the origins of the art project in the current business?
Yes. Well, I will say from a business perspective, it's not a well-designed business. meaning if you talk to someone who's in business, it's all about scalability, you know, and growth. And the thing about the League of Kitchens is it's really hard to find the right people. So to have the 13 instructors that we have, I've interviewed several hundred people. I've done like 70 in-home cooking auditions.
Wow.
We do a very intensive training. And then the instructors can only have 6 students in their home at a time. So again, it's really, it's not scalable.
Very
And
boutique.
But, you know, I think what makes it an art project still, or where the art origins are, is that I think when I thought of this as an artist, it was about creating a very special, unique, meaningful experience that just felt like nothing else. And we succeeded. It is like that. But it's just, that's not a value of business. But that's what makes the League of Kitchens so special. So, you know, we're a good, solid business, but we're not going to be. Part of what makes it so special is that it's small and that it's intimate, and it doesn't have a structure to easily scale.
Well, one way to scale is through a cookbook.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. And that is something I've thought about too, is just part of what we do is about sharing these ideas, these recipes. You know, it's funny, actually, when I was in grad school, I curated a colloquium called Reimagining Home as a Site for Personal and Societal Transformation. So actually, the League of Kitchens really came out of that too, where we were using domestic space in this public and political way. But one of the people who was part of that was Fritz Haig, who, if any of you are familiar with him, his most well-known project is called Edible Estates, where he transformed the front lawns of several locations across America into edible gardens. And I remember he said he thought of all of the press coverage he got as actually part of his project, because part of what he believed his art was about disseminating these ideas. And he did that not only through the project, but through the coverage he got. And so I think about that too, that part of what we're doing, it's about the classes, it's about wanting as many people as possible to do the classes, which actually close to 7,000 people have done,
Wow,
which is
that's
wild, in like 6-person groups in 11 years. But it's also, you know, we've been lucky to get a lot of press, and I do think about all of that as we're so much about sharing these ideas and bringing, just recognizing and celebrating immigrants and older immigrant women mostly, and how much they contribute and their expertise and their knowledge, and being part of that conversation and bringing those ideas forward is a big part of what we're about.
I love that, and I want to talk more about it. But before we do that, maybe we'll just turn to Abby for a moment to hear a little bit about your journey and your book and how it came to be.
Yeah, so I wrote Mayumu Filipino American Desserts Remixed. I started the process in 2021, and it came out in 2023. And it's all like 75 recipes of Filipino American desserts. And for me, like, my parents both immigrated from the Philippines in like the early 90s. And I've always had kind of like a fraught relationship with, I don't know, it's like I love food, and it's always kind of like, I think some people expect your story to be like, my mom taught me everything I know, and because of her, I know everything that I know now. And it's not always like that, and I think she is not one to also like write measurements down and to do all of that. And I think for me, when I was doing research for the book, I did a lot of like cookbook research and like blog research, and I asked my parents, and I talked to them in like an interview style about their lives and about, you know, like what kind of dishes did you crave when you first moved here, and things that just don't come up organically sometimes when I was like 25 and, you know, just like now I have a purpose and I have to finish this book. And I think that, you know, 2 recipes from the book came from my mom and dad, but then I tweaked them and I revised them a bit to fit like kind of what my kitchen is like, and I think that was a learning experience in its own way. But I do think there's so much value in kind of like writing down like those steps that they knew and they tried and true methods. But it's emotional when it's like, especially your own parents and your own family. And I felt like even now, like, even though the book has been finished and it's in print and it's done, it's kind of like an active journey of like kind of revisiting those kind of recipes and also revisiting my relationship with my family. So I know that was kind of loaded, but that's what food is. It's very personal and it's very political and it's all these things. And so I never try to shy away from that, but I know that like I always encourage people to write cookbooks because it is kind of a historical text that people need to know. And even though I'm turning 30 and I think that's really scary next month, I was so young when I was starting to do this, and now it's like, oh wow, would I have done things differently? I don't know, but I'm glad that that is kind of the record of what my life was like even 5 years ago. So, yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful, thank you. Yeah. And very inspiring. I think we're all running out to start researching our own cookbooks and revisit our family traumas.
Thank you, yeah, literally.
But actually about the family sort of aspect of it, because you're both first generation to immigrant families, and I'm curious, you know, when did you figure that out? You know, when was growing up as young kids, was there a moment that you're like, oh, my parents are different, or did it sort of hit you at some point that they're not Americans, that they're different from you, that they're different from others? And did that realization and that relationship change over time to how you view them?
Well, since my dad's family came here in the 1890s, on one side I'm 4th or 5th generation, and then one side I'm 1st generation. So but actually, my mother is the only person in her entire extended Korean family who married a non-Korean person. Oh, wow. And my father is the only person in his whole extended family that married a non-Jewish person. So, and I'm an only child. So I was sort of singular on both sides of my family.
Amazing.
And I actually do think, and I write about this in the book, that experience really influenced my ability to start and run the League of Kitchens, because I think that I had both the experience of being the child of an immigrant and what it's like to have an immigrant mother, and feeling like she really didn't get a lot, or I had to sort of help her in certain ways. But then on the other side, my dad was American. And, in both sides of my family, there was a sense of like being an insider and an outsider always. And I do think that in a way, that's what I do with the League of Kitchens, is that, I created this structure and this framework that helps to bridge our immigrant instructors and our mostly American community of students. And so I can sort of see things from both perspectives. And, but on the other hand, too, I do think working with our instructors, I think anyone who's the child of immigrants knows this dance where there are certain areas where your parents are the experts and they're the adults, and it's important that you treat them that way. And then there are certain things that they really need your help with and they want you to help them with. And I think that comes into play all the time with our instructors, is sort of, I think, innately understanding like, okay, in these ways, in these areas, they're the experts, they're the bosses, and I really respect them and appreciate that, but there are also certain things they really need help with and want help with, and I don't feel nervous about offering that help.
Thank you. And Abby, did you have the same sort of feeling of needing to kind of sort of be the translator, if you will, for your parents in certain areas?
I think think like it was interesting. I grew up in the Bay Area in California, and a lot of my friends were Filipino, first generation of like immigrant parents, and so I felt like that was so normal that like it wasn't really until like high school that I felt like, oh, we're really different people, me and my parents, and in ways that I think when you're starting to talk about like, oh, what do you want to study? What do you want to do for a living? And I think that's really where a lot of the tension lies a lot of times with like expectation reality of like, I think my mom wanted me to be an accountant, and I went to business school, and I'm not an accountant. And in some ways that is a failure to my mom. But no, it's like, I think that is like, I do feel like there were times when my mom would ask me like, can you reread this email like 50 times to make sure this sounds correct? And I was like, Mom, like no one cares about grammar. Like I will have like the worst emails from professors be like sent from iPhone. And I think there's some like reality where I think my parents, like they're great at speaking English, and I understand them perfectly. But it's like a weird, there's other things that kind of come in between us of like cultural expectations of them growing up in a totally different place and me growing up also in a totally different place. And I sometimes wish that they did treat me more like an adult, but sometimes we're in that weird like, oh, like, you know, they want to take care of you in a sense, but maybe too much sometimes. I don't know if you feel that way, Lisa, but I feel that
Lisa can't speak to that because her daughters
Well,
are
Oh
in the
yeah, you're
audience.
home now too.
Also, I'm almost 43, so in 13 years probably you'll
Yeah.
feel a little different.
Okay, that's good. That's good to hear. It gets better.
It'll all become clear in 13 years. Mark your calendar.
It'll all be clear. You'll understand everything. The relationship will be resolved.
So much to look forward to.
But I love what you both said about immigrants sort of bringing this other perspective, this idea of, and you know, we, as part of the theme that we're excavating in this panel, I'm curious, what do you think specifically in the area of food about this idea that immigrants basically give you this alternative perspective, both to the home country, right, the culture of origin that they're sort of a little bit removed from and can look at from the outside, but and also to the new society and culture that they're embracing. It's new to them, they're seeing it in new ways. And I'm curious if we can kind of think about that sort of immigrants, you know, their contribution in that way, or what we can learn from them when we think specifically about this area of food.
Take this one for I do think that the great thing about like I guess even my parents and my aunts and uncles is the ingenuity of like adapting a lot of recipes that I know like when you go to the Philippines you have all these like tropical kind of fruits and vegetables that are not always native to, you know, here, especially in New York, and even in California. And so there are times where I would see a recipe and like usually it uses calamansi, for example, which is a Philippine lime. But my mom and dad would just go to Food for Less and go to like get lemon and lime and try to MacGyver the hybrid that the actual fruit is. And you know, and that would be in like a steak dish that is called bistec in Filipino food. And so I do realize that a part of that is something I take with me, even though now I live very far away from them. And it's almost harder being here sometimes just because it's so cold, and it is, I think, just like really difficult to, I don't know, I think when you're used to seeing certain ingredients and you're like, I can recognize labels and you can recognize different brands just by looking at them. And then you don't see those brands anymore as commonplace as you do. There's no, you know, Filipino grocery store as big as like Seafood City, which is like a chain there. So yeah, it's like a learning curve, and I think that's what makes kind of what everyone else is doing here, like whatever insert, you know, where you're from and an American is a lot of the times just adapting what you have, and it makes it even something new, but something totally familiar, which I think is the beauty of like food in general.
And I think also your book especially, it's this melding of both your cultures, right? It's not like a Filipino book, but it's this Filipino-American integration that is you, right?
For sure.
Well, I think also, you know, as someone who's bicultural and then now lives in New York City and has lived here really my whole entire adult life, I just think there's so much richness in the mashup and just everyone living together and, having so much incredible food from every part of the world in this city. And even my kids who are here, who are growing up here, and I know your kids grew up here too, Yael, it's just such a gift to be exposed to so many different cultures and the foods and flavors of so many cultures. Like, actually, we were in Italy this summer, and Italy has incredible Italian food, but occasionally we would try to eat some other food from other cultures, and most of it was really bad. Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. I do think we all know that Italy's been incredible in preserving their culinary heritage, but there is this dark side where they've also kept out through laws the foods of other cultures. Like, I was talking with a friend who told me that in certain villages or towns of Italy, there are actually rules that Italian food can't be food that's not Italian can't be within the walls of the village or the town, because they're trying to maintain this purity. Which I think someone from New York City would just think, like, that's crazy. Like, this is why wouldn't we want this richness of culture? And, and it's interesting with the League of Kitchens, there's kind of this paradox, because our instructors are really culinary and cultural lineage holders in their communities, and they do things using traditional techniques, methods, recipes from scratch, and those are the individuals that we look for. However, we have 13 incredible women from 13 different countries. We all hang out together and love, eating each other's food. We have the best potlucks, and, going to each other's classes. And so, like, as a community, we're all about this cross-cultural connection. And also just like our instructors in their own lives, they all eat at all the different restaurants and love cooking different foods from different cuisines. But and that's who we all are today. But I think part of what the League of Kitchens is about is also recognizing and celebrating and creating this platform to share this traditional knowledge, which also has so much value, and which is oftentimes an oral tradition and a domestic female tradition, and is therefore so easily lost.
Yeah. And I did notice in the book where you ask the instructors to tell their stories, and there's also, what other foods do you love? And
it's funny. So in the book, we have bios and interviews with every instructor, and one of the questions I did ask was, what are your favorite foods to eat not from your culture? And many of them said pizza, which was interesting. Yeah.
I actually want to quote like this one line that I loved from your introduction that says, some part of the world that formerly felt abstract and distant now feels personal after having that experience. And maybe for both of you, this idea of food as this window into a culture, a way to introduce you to a particular culture. Could you talk a little bit about that specifically? How is that different from, music or books or other cultural products? Do you see food as this gateway that's a little different into learning and understanding someone else?
Well, I think for us, food is so pleasurable, and it's so immediate, and it's so personal because you literally take it into your body. And I mean, with music too, but it doesn't feel as visceral. And it's not language-based, right? Like verbal language-based. So it is, and I think too, we always talk about the way food brings people together. So like our instructors are not just great cooks, they're also incredible hosts. And when they welcome students into their homes, they welcome them with so much love and generosity and kindness, and then this incredible food, because every workshop starts with a homemade lunch or snack, depending on whether you're doing the 2.5 hour or 4.5 hour class. And then everyone eats together at the end. And there's something also about being in someone's home, which is just warm, personal, intimate, where the instructor is the host. And then there's this delicious food, and then it's sitting and it's talking, and there is something emotional that happens, I think, in our workshops and around food, where oftentimes, students show up at our classes feeling sort of awkward. They're knocking on a stranger's door in an apartment building or neighborhood. They've never probably been, they might have been to that neighborhood. They definitely haven't been to that apartment building. Maybe they've never been to that neighborhood. And then at the end of the class, everyone's hugging and feels like the instructor is family, is like their new favorite aunt. And that I think is just so moving and powerful, and something that's so absent often from our lives and our culture. And another thought I had when I was starting the League of Kitchens was just how, even though New York City is statistically the most diverse place on the planet, there are so few opportunities for meaningful cross-cultural connection, either between immigrants of different immigrant groups or immigrants and non-immigrants, and most interactions are service-based. So it's like the person at the bodega or the person at the dry cleaner or the waiter at the restaurant, unless you grew up here and your friends from school, are from all over the world, you're not gonna, or your work puts you in touch with people, like there isn't that opportunity for that kind of close personal connection. And I think just food makes it fun and makes it easier, and it makes people relax and open up, and just naturally facilitates that connection.
And I guess the only thing I have to add is that, like, I think that when I was recipe developing and making things up in my head, a lot of it was so connected to movies that I love, and like coming here, I think I never really got to have as many like Jewish delicacies as much until I moved to New York, and so definitely impacted like the recipes in the book. I have like a arugula recipe, and I also have like a black and white cookie that has like jasmine, which is like the sampaguita is like the national flower of the Philippines, and incorporating that flavor instead of sometimes like lemon extract or chocolate. And so yeah, it is really cool to see like cross-cultural exchange within food that just happens from life experience, but also just through like, yeah, just the intermingling of art that I think of. And it's, yeah, I mean, it's probably my favorite medium of art just because it is so tangible. Like you can taste it and you can feel it, which is what I love about it.
Yeah, and I love this idea of it being so approachable for everybody. There's no language barriers. Everybody can relate to it. And you had started to talk about this idea of creating cross-cultural connection, and one of the things I've seen in both your books is this idea of food as a way to connect with a community, whether it's, your community of origin or it's a new community you're coming to and trying to build. And you wrote, Abby, in your book about, don't worry about cutting the recipe down, just share it with people, with your neighbors, with, your colleagues, take it out. And in your book, I think one of the instructors was saying, Damira, in Uzbek.
Here.
Oh, wonderful. Hi. And Damira, I love the fact that you said that in Uzbek cooking, it's common that when you cook, you share with your neighbors and friends. It's not something you keep to yourself, but it's an opportunity for sharing with community. I was wondering if you guys want to talk to that a little bit, this idea of building communities or connecting.
Yeah, so actually, tangentially, but in a related way, lots of people always ask me, how are the instructors comfortable hosting groups of American strangers in their homes? Because, anyone can go to our website, sign up for a class, and then they show up. And interestingly, a lot of our instructors, particularly the first group, were all from countries, particularly in like the Mediterranean, Middle East, South Asia, Central Asia, that have very strong hospitality cultures and cultures around welcoming guests and welcoming strangers. Like, for instance, when I was in India, I met this older couple at a restaurant. We were seated together, and they invited me to their niece's wedding that was like 2 days later. So, I think in many cultures, that kind of hospitality is very common and very valued. So I think that it's, for me personally, having grown up in America, that's so much more atomistic, and that's not common. And it's been so incredible and inspiring to be in our instructors' homes and to see just how easily they welcome people, they cook tons, they're always bringing, many of our instructors, every time I see them, they're like, bring me food they made. Just it's so natural for them, it's what they grew up with, or they just always are welcoming guests. Like actually our Afghan instructor, Nawida, after she got married at 18, she moved in with her husband's extended family, and it was an extended family of 35 people. And she and her sister-in-law were in charge of cooking 3 meals a day for 35 people for 10 years. And she always would say, and there were maybe 5 or 7 guests at every meal. And so it's just, I think for me personally, I love seeing how they do it, like how natural it is to them, and experiencing it. And I think that's something that our students really value too, and that's something that sadly is really missing in a lot of pockets of American culture. That kind of energy and approach to community and hosting and food.
I know that was one of the things that for me as a immigrant was really hard to get used to in the beginning when I moved to the States, and people wouldn't invite you to their homes. It would be like, let's meet in a restaurant, and to me that was so strange.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess for me, like I'm definitely like an advocate for like Filipino food, and I was able to go to the Philippines like last week, and it was the first time like since the book came out that I was able to go, and I think it's like really an honor, honestly, and also just like such a luxury to be able to come and go like across the world and like kind of see like where, you know, the book's impact is, and to collaborate with chefs over in the Philippines. And I think there's so much responsibility that I feel for like the Filipino community, especially in food, and I am very grateful to be in that position of like, you know, I can advocate for a lot of other chefs and a lot of other writers that I really love. And it is a lot of pressure, though, I will say, and sometimes it is kind of like nerve-wracking because I just feel like I'm still in the beginning of my career and I have so much more to go. But it is really nice to, again, like, you know, be doing book tours and like doing book events, and you get to meet so many different people, not just Filipino people, but other, you know, people that are bakers who love the book. So there's such intersection of different kinds of people that, you know, you find along the journey of book writing and loving books. And so it's really fun. And I wouldn't be on the stage without, you know, without writing this book, and so without also celebrating your book, Lisa. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, I want to take a few minutes to talk about feminism. Your daughter reminded me that this is actually Women's History Month,
Yeah.
right? Thank you. And I was thinking about it in advance of this panel that, you know, you are both such amazing career women, right? Like, you know, whether with the encouragement of your grandmother or whatever else, you know, your family pushed you to do. You've managed to juggle family life and a career and writing a cookbook alongside that career, or, you know, creating all of these things. And I know, Lisa, for you, you have daughters also that you're modeling life for. And to me, it was so interesting to think of finding kind of this place for feminism in the kitchen, in the place your grandmother was sort of pushing you out of. So I was wondering if you could talk about that. And also, does it relate to the immigrant experience? Is it with immigrant women that you find strength through food, like all of your instructors? I don't know.
Yeah, so I think my grandmother would be very happy I was running a company about cooking. But I do think of the work we do as a feminist project, meaning that part of feminism is valuing and reclaiming forms of traditional women's work that were devalued because they were women's work. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, our instructors are culinary and cultural lineage holders in their communities. So what do I mean by that? That's actually a term that comes from a lot of Eastern spiritual traditions, like in Zen Buddhism or in certain traditions of Hinduism. Teachings were passed down orally from master to disciple or student, you know, who became the next master, et cetera. And then that person was considered the lineage holder. They were holding the wisdom and traditions and knowledge of that spiritual tradition. And, you know, when you think about the history of cooking and culinary culture in the world, there are really two streams. One is court cooking, like the cooking of the aristocracy. And then you have peasant cooking, which is the cooking of everyone else, and really the heart of global cooking traditions everywhere. And when it comes to those sort of peasant cooking traditions, those are all domestic traditions. the foods that people cook at home, and it's mostly women who are doing that cooking. Of course, and there are always men doing cooking, and oftentimes in cultures, men will do outdoor cooking or large fire cooking. But in most places around the world, the everyday cooking is done by women in the home, and it's passed down between women. So, over the last 10,000 years, many culinary traditions around the world have been passed down orally between women in the home. But because it's been women, because it's been in the home, because it's been an oral tradition, it's often been overlooked or not valued or undervalued. And this idea of restaurant cooking is really the apotheosis of cuisine, is a Western European tradition really from the 18th and 19th centuries. So even now in many parts of the world, the food you eat outside of the home is like street food or festival food, but the best food is what you find in the home, and it's not in restaurants. So that's what the League of Kitchens is. It's like we are taking these, I always say that they are extraordinary, ordinary women. It's these women who in some ways are very ordinary women, but who have this incredible cooking knowledge, expertise, passion, skill, talent. And we're creating an opportunity for them to really be recognized and celebrated. And I just love, too, how in a world of kind of social media that focuses very often on young chefs, that we're focusing on older ladies,
Hooray
from
for
all over
older
the world.
ladies.
Huh?
Hooray for older
Yes,
ladies.
yes. And I just feel like that's so important, and sort of bringing their faces and their stories and their knowledge 100%. Forward. And also, like, our instructors have been featured in Food and Wine. Like, we did a 6-month partnership with Food and Wine magazine where every month they featured recipes from one of our instructors. And we've done a lot of partnerships with a lot of prestigious food media, and I feel like even that is so important because it's putting forward these women as true experts and not only looking to the restaurant chefs. And this has changed a lot, but often those chefs were also white men. So those are some of the ways I would say that what we do is a feminist project.
And I love all of them. Abby, anything?
Yeah, I think traditionally a lot of like pastry, the face of it is a lot of white women, and I'm a woman of color, of course, and so I think that a lot of the times I try to champion also not just Filipino voices, of course, but also there's a lot of people of color in bakers that I love, and I think that is kind of changing the narrative of who is allowed to be like in these spaces that a lot of times food media kind of gatekeeps you from. And I know, like, I love Ina Garten, I love Martha Stewart, but sometimes that is such like an old guard kind of way of thinking about food, of just those women can only do like a really beautiful like bouche de Noël spread or something. And I think we would love to change that. And there's so many more amazing flavors and global kind of points of views that I think are really cool about baking specifically. So that's kind of like the angle that I see, like, at least in the feminist angle of what I do.
It's all in like 2 seconds, so I know we're talking about big questions here. But before we turn it over to the audience and we ask a couple of the instructors to join us on stage, maybe to end, is there one recipe, I know it's like choosing amongst your children, is there one recipe you want to share that you feel is special, is something you want to kind of highlight to the audience, something that is particularly important or particularly exciting for you out of your books?
Can I go first? Okay, I'll be quick. There's a Hala Hala Baked Alaska on the cover of my book, and I hadn't revisited it until last week in the Manila, and I was doing a live demo. I'm trying to do the Baked Alaska in a really hot, like 80-degree kitchen, and it was so humbling to see it, just like the meringue just sliding off as I was piping, and I was like, everybody, like it was a room of like 60, 70 people, and it was like press and media, and I was like, just know that this isn't how it's supposed to be, and you just roll with it. And I think that book, especially the cover of it, it's such a icon of the book. And I think that accepting failure sometimes is important, especially when it's a live demo. But it's a really special recipe, and I think you should all revisit it in the comfort of hopefully AC kitchen.
So I can't choose a recipe, but maybe I'll just say something about the recipes as a whole, which we haven't talked about. So We really focus the book on everyday home cooking. So all of our instructors honestly could have their own cookbook of recipes, and they're full of incredible recipes for holidays and feasts that are very complex. But I really wanted to capture their more simple but fabulous everyday recipes, some of which honestly, the instructors were like, this is too simple. Why are we putting this in a book? And I was like, people love this. Americans like simple. But I will say the egg chapter is an interesting place to start in the book. So the book is actually not divided by cuisine. It's divided by main ingredients. So we have a chicken chapter, a beef chapter, a vegetables chapter, salads, soups, eggs, grains, sweets. And so the reason for that is because I really wanted this book to be very practical. And I think that the way most people use cookbooks is they have some chicken and they need a chicken recipe. Or they're making some chicken and they want a vegetable side that's not roasted broccoli, because we love roasted broccoli but are sick of roasted broccoli. So all the cuisines are blended together. And I think the egg chapter is very interesting because questions. It's very accessible because eggs are quick, but the recipes are really interesting. And there are a lot of flavors, a lot of recipes that will be unfamiliar, which I think is very exciting. I think we all see a lot of the same recipes over and over again, but that are just really fabulously delicious. So we have about, I think, 75 recipes. We originally had 150, and our editor kept cutting and cutting and cutting. So it's really like every one is fabulous. And when you read the recipes, they are long, but they're not hard. And the reason they're long is I really wanted to capture those little details and tricks and nuances and ways of doing things that are why our instructors' food is so incredible. So we did a whole process, maybe we'll talk more about this, where we did recipe writing sessions on Zoom with each instructor, where I sent each instructor a box of measuring tools because most of them don't have measuring tools. And there's some irony here because they are the kinds of cooks that do everything by feel, for memory in their bodies. But I wanted to write recipes that anyone could cook and make food that tasted like their food. And so no matter where you grew up, it's unlikely that you have a deep body knowledge of these 14 cuisines. So what we did is we did cooking sessions on Zoom where I would cook with them. They would do a step, I would do a step, and they would measure, I would measure. And I drove them crazy because we would take an onion, we would weigh it, unpeeled, then they would peel it, they would chop it. I would ask them to use the ruler to measure how big the pieces were. Then we put them in cups. There's like, is that a cup of diced onion? Is it a half cup? And we recorded these videos, and then my co-writer, Rachel Wharton, who's a very experienced cookbook co-writer, she watched those videos over and over again, wrote the recipes from those videos. Then she sent me the written recipes. I tested all of them, cooked through them. Then we sent lots of questions to the instructors, mostly through WhatsApp. We have a very active WhatsApp group and life as a company. And with tons of questions, they sent the answers back. We integrated those answers, then we sent the final recipes to the instructors. So what we say is we recommend that you measure the first time through, because some things are unconventional. Like oftentimes the way an instructor, and I'm going to finish this.
I was just going to say,
yes,
maybe the instructors will want to join us in the meantime.
Well, okay, great. The way they cut an onion is often like a little bigger, a little smaller than is sort of conventional American cookbooks. And those things really make a difference in how it cooks down. So we say, like, we recommend that people measure the first time through, and then you'll know what the recipe's supposed to taste like. And then the second, third time through, you make it your own. You add your own touch. But I really wanted not to give a kind of impression of what the instructor's food was like. Like a lot of cookbooks that are recipes from abroad where someone travels somewhere and writes those recipes, it's that author's interpretation. It's not like the exact recipe. And I wanted those exact recipes.
And I love that meticulousness that's in all, everything around the League of Kitchens. And it's also something that in Jewish Food Society we do a lot, like this idea of translating a home recipe into something everybody can replicate in their kitchen. I know how much work that takes, and it's amazing how incredible it is in the book.
Thank you. I just want to welcome our Greek instructor, Despina Economou, and our Ukrainian-Russian instructor, Larissa Frumkin.
Very fitting. The first question is for the instructors. How did you learn how to cook, and who taught you?
I learned from my father. He used to be a cook, and my stepmother. And I started cooking since I was 10, 11 years old, and I still love it.
Okay, I just don't remember my family teaching me, because my mother was an architect and a painter, and she wasn't very enthusiastic. She did her job wonderfully, but she didn't inspire. And I started reading, and especially in Russia, it wasn't like here. Nothing was available normally in the store. Lines and shortage of everything, and it was difficult to find food you wanted, and farmers markets was also very expensive, and so the life was very, very boring. I mean, a gastronomic life, and I wanted to make something different. I wanted to just do something wonderful for my friends. And I started inventing. I was buying something very, very simple and very easy to, and cheap and easy to get, but combine it with something which was also available. For example, it's very, very, it's like tart cream. It's dry, and you had to add some milk to it, and you had to add some something else. I don't remember now what. And then I bought a can of peaches, and I made this cream, and I put this peaches on the beautiful plate and cover it with cream, and it was something. And so my friends were very, it's interesting that some of my friends, they became now, one became a very big movie stars, and she came to our hungry parties, and she admired my something which was just new, something maybe inventive, yeah. And it was why I wanted to cook. And I was, then I started learning languages. I got Italian cookbook, English translation. And I started trying to make something. And then I taught my mother different recipes. But I understood that my grandmother, who I didn't remember well, she died very young. And she was a very good cook, and she was even giving cooking classes at home in late 20s and early 30s. And so how my father came for dinner and then was just trapped there because he saw my mother wanted to marry her. Mother didn't want to marry, she wanted to study, to become an architect. And but together with my grandmother, they just made it possible for him to marry my mother. And it was really very happy marriage for 60 years. And so I was thinking about my grandmother while I was trying to make some Jewish food. And so just some stories about her helped me. And that was my way to, especially when I found the books. And when we came to America 50 years ago with my 10-year-old daughter, we were not surprised because we knew, but we were shocked by everything was available in any store, and everything was just for us. We didn't never experience that for my 40 years in the Soviet Union, we never experienced because it was really different countries in any I would say any side of lives. Not only food, art and books, where just everything was forbidden, and we had to made our ways to new great music and read great books, especially when I started learning English. I could read it in English, even like Dr. Zhivago, first in English translation before it became available in Russian. So that was
And I'll also say that Larissa's daughter, Anya von Bremzen, is a very well-known writer and food writer, and she wrote a beautiful memoir called Mastering the Art of Soviet Cooking, and a lot of it's about Larissa. So Larissa, clearly you can see, is full of amazing stories. You need to go to her class, but also if you read Anya's memoir, you'll hear so much more about their life in the Soviet Union and coming here.
Actually, maybe this is also the point where we can answer the question, what is your website?
Oh,
That
yes.
one.
So our website, thank you whoever asked this, is leagueofkitchens.com. We're also on Instagram, League of Kitchens. And maybe I'll just insert here that we actually created a special promo code for everyone here tonight or watching for $20 off any of our classes or gift certificates. It's NYPL20. So basically like New York Public Library, $20 off. And that could be used as many times as you want. I think it's active until Sunday. Katie, can you tell me our communications and marketing? Sunday, yes, it's active till Sunday. So I hope you guys will check out our classes.
Wanted to get that out of
Thank
the way.
you.
Another question for the instructors. How much has the local availability of ingredients in America came to affect your recipes, the recipes you brought from Greece, from your homeland? How much did those change by what you were able to get in America? What was available in stores and locally? If at all.
Raise your mic. Closer.
Yeah, but I didn't understand the question. Sorry.
Was it coming to America? Were you able to get all the ingredients that you were used to in Greece, or did you have to change your recipes to match?
I used to cook Greek when I first came, and I used to go to the Greek supermarkets, which I found everything there. But when I started cooking other American food, I found everything in the supermarkets, yes.
But I do know you always say that the fish in Greece is very different than what you can get here, right?
Oh, yes. I have a story to tell you. I'm a registered nurse, and I came here in 1972. And I went to Lowell, Massachusetts, and all the nurses and doctors ate at the hospital.
Can you
so
hold your
I
mic up?
miss the fish so much. And when I saw the fillet, I took the fillet and I tasted it, and I said, "Oh, wow, what kind of a fish is this?" So I didn't eat it. I went back to Greece, and the first year when I was here, I went back because my father was sick, and my stepmother asked me, "What do you want me to cook for you?" I said, "Fish for a week."
Now we know what to cook for you for dinner.
Yeah, the fish tastes so much better. I don't know why.
This is a long one. I'm going to let you read it as I'm reading out the next question. One fun question is, what is your favorite recipe to the instructors that is not yours from the book? What do you like in the book that is the most that is not your recipe?
What I like from the book that is not my recipe?
Your own. What of the recipes from other?
Or that you might want to try.
Yeah.
Are there any recipes?
Are there any recipes in the book that you love, that you want to try, that are not your recipes, that are from someone else?
Yes, I like a recipe that is was done in the Indian instructor, but I don't remember the name. I don't remember.
Well, I will say, you know, I mentioned our potluck. So twice a year we do a big potluck, once at my apartment as a holiday party and once in Central Park. And it is the best potluck you could imagine. And I do think that one cool thing has been just the community that's developed between our instructors, you know, their independent friendships. And I think for many instructors, it's an opportunity to try a lot of foods from other parts of the world that they haven't tried before. So I guess also, is there food you've tried at one of our potlucks that you really loved from one of our other instructors?
I don't remember the names of
Or
the
yeah, you could
recipe.
describe it. Or yeah, or Larissa, do you want to say anything about any of the other recipes in the book?
Yeah, I just admire most of the recipes from the book, and they are pretty difficult to make because it's yeah, it's not simple recipes because they probably the Japanese or Indian or even Mexican cuisine is more difficult than even American, or American is all of this, of course, I understand that, but not like Russian, because I still love something simple, because I was always busy, but wanted to make a feast. And so I wanted to make something, a lot of something, and something simple and something surprising. But it's what from the book, I love many recipes, but especially one of thing that I'm probably the oldest person in this room, because I'm turning 91 very soon in 5 days. Thank you very much. And so that's of course it's I admire everyone of our, it's just my new family. It's something which made me really happy, maybe give me the longer life, because I was, when I just retired, then I did volunteer works for 20 years, and then also had to retire, and I didn't know what to do. And my friend Sonia, she just told me that there is one place. I mentioned that I wanted to do something with food, and she said, there is a wonderful thing, League of Kitchens. And she called for me, and I met Lisa. And it changed my life, and maybe prolonged it, because because I found family, I found inspiration, I found even this audience and something great, what I never expected. I wanted to be an actress, but I never had a great chance. But now I feel like I had to do it my whole life. I wanted to, but at least by the end of it. Thank you very much.
I think we're going to have to end on that note. I think that was such a beautiful answer to such a beautiful panel. Thank you both so much, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
If you have questions that haven't been answered, Lisa and the instructors are going to be here signing books, and Abby's going to hang out, and you're welcome to come up and ask your question in person, not through me. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight.
Thank you.